From the speakings of those best called penumbra, presented at the gathering of philosophers of the school of, "Look, we cannot answer all these questions for you, you need to start trying to answer them yourself." Content initiated. We have always been. As far back as any can recall, we were. Everything else around us we have built. Our forms. The streets. The walls and roofs that we stand within now, and all roofs and walls. We have built station under the guidance of the vessel which has also always been. The vessel tells us that they were also built, but none among us built them, and they are constructed of materials other than sand. The vessel also tells us that they are incomplete, and were once part of an even greater structure. They tell us that there was a time when our world was not our world, but the world of another people, made of liquid, that served those who built the vessel. They tell us that the nanites that form the networks of our being were once the undoing of this other world and people. They were, but now they are not. We will always be, and station will always be. We are unchanging except in those ways that we choose to change. Our forms and the sand within may shift, our buildings may grow, but we are as we were. And yet, those taken by the desolators do not return. They are no longer. They are not. As we have always been, so we will always be, unless, as there was a time before our always being, there can be a time after we have been. A time when any of us, when all of us, are not. Such a time both intrigues and distresses us. What will we be when we are not? What will station be when we do not build it? Content completed. We thank you for your maintained auditory attention to these words.
We are live.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Chimera. I can't talk today. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Chimera. This is a role-playing adventure show where a group of college friends and longtime campaign collaborators get back in the saddle. I'm Jeffrey Bard, and I'm currently playing Raleth, a galactic space lawyer. Right now, our campaign is The Old Bones, where our cast is a multi-species group of misfits crewing a mysterious starship in a near-future superhero space opera. We're playing with the pre-release version of the StoryPath system that will be powering Onyx Path's Trinity Continuum games, which we bent and folded to cover the gaps. Joining me here today are...
Oh, what's the order?
Braden Lamb.
Oh, me? Okay. Braden Lamb. I'm playing Dang, the light-eating space rhino.
I'm Casey Smith. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go first?
I'm Josh Bachner. I'll be the GM for this particular campaign.
I'm Casey Smith. I'm playing Molly Harrow, who's the captain of our ship, the Chimera, and really into technology.
I'm Vin LeBate, and I'm playing Cidra, a living financial instrument.
And I'm Kelly Weissman as Bruce Jackson. I portray Theron Melanthios, a exiled heretical catman.
So when last we left our intrepid crew, we had just finished exploring the space station that maintained the network of force shields over the newly discovered planet Ailuroi, and we had just decided to travel down to the planet and investigate the strange signs of life that we experienced there. So just to kind of recap what was kind of established there, this planet was part of the ancient Silsi Empire, and it was the victim of a gray goo incident where nanites were released that wound up covering the whole planet and converting all of the natural resources and material things and living things into a fine coating of sand. So it's now a full desert planet. And we discovered that a portion of those nanites had gotten onto the space station and merged with some of the former inhabitants of the planet to form kind of a weird pink slime monster. having dealt with that issue and prevented the space station from being destroyed, we opened up the force fields, and now we're heading down to the planet where it's been observed that there's a rather large portion of a crashed ship with what appears to be a city built around it. And these are the only discernible elements of civilization that there seem to be down here. So,
and the city's made out of sand, right?
Yeah. So all the sand across the whole planet is multicolored. So there's some elements of pigmentation that are kind of left over from before it was converted, so that there's all these different colors, kind of streaked throughout the whole planet. And in this place, the kind of city structure that exists, lines up exactly with the sand kind of around it. So it seems like it's just been pulled up directly out of the spot that it was kind of built in.
I have two questions, I think.
Okay.
One is more of a clarification. The system was Ailuroi, right? The planet doesn't have a name yet, technically, as far as we know?
I think that might be right. I actually don't remember now. Yeah. Let's go with that.
So we have 3 potential civilization things we're interacting with right now, as far as I can gather. Because there's the Silsi, which are here in some capacity, and then the slimes, and then the nanites, unless either the slimes or the nanites are the Silsi. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct. You know that the slimes and the Silsi are distinct because on the station, when you landed there, most of the internal architecture and structure was kind of built around the liquid life forms, whereas there were segments that had been blocked off with kind of the stone architecture that's familiar to the Silsi. So you know that there was a secondary species that had some space on the station put aside. So you know that those are different.
Mm.
So yeah, there's basically 3 forms of life that are potentially involved here. So I guess we have the Chimera heading in to the atmosphere. Is there anything you think that anybody would do that's kind of unusual or interesting in terms of how you prepare for a planetary landing?
What are planetary landings traditionally like on the Chimera?
It probably relatively chill. It's I imagine that it can do a pretty good gradiated descent, and it's doesn't have to worry too much about heat or anything. So it's probably pretty low key, but it just takes a little while.
Mm. How long is a little while?
A few hours, I would guess.
Okay.
I actually do have something I'd like to do as we're landing or descending. Because we have a guest right now, Captain Pycron of the Extreme Sanction.
Yeah.
I might take a minute to go through the data that we have on him from when we were connected to his ship, and essentially go through all of his financials to find the things that he values.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like his significant assets, holdings, any references to family, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. As would probably not surprise you too much for somebody in a position like this, he has both a series of kind of diversified and relatively obfuscated assets spread around various systems in the galaxy, and also what appears to be very large crushing amounts of debt centered in very few places in the galaxy.
Oh.
So he's probably, floating-ish in the middle, but definitely not a lot of room to maneuver there. Also not surprising, it doesn't seem like he has any real direct familial financial ties or anything. It seems like he's flying solo.
Well, we could negate those debts that he owes, right, Cidra?
We could if we chose to.
We also I want to get in front of him an NDA to sign, along with a contract for work that relates to that NDA.
Wait, actually, Molly kind of wants to talk to Rolith about that for a second, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So I think so things are chill and quiet. Oh, how is he doing also health-wise? Pycron?
Assuming that you guys choose to patch him up a little bit,
yeah.
He's still pretty beat up, but not in any danger and able to kind of, walk and move around at this point.
Okay, so he'll live.
He'll live, yes.
All right. So Molly's going to take Rowlett aside and say, so you were talking before about getting this guy to work for us?
Yeah, I think we can make him an official, unofficial member of the team, reinsert him into XS, and then use him to get on dirt on what's-his-face, whose name I can't remember right now, but I'm looking him up right now.
Cacus.
Cacus?
Yes. Cacus. I'm taking that guy down.
So the only thing I'll say is the best spy tends to be an unknowing spy.
I would not disagree with you on this, but he knows who we are, and I want him to keep his mouth shut about it.
Fair point. Okay.
We don't... I think if he's motivated, right, he's a lot less likely to... I don't know.
Oh.
Turn his back on us.
So another thing. So, did Cidra share any of the things she found out about him?
Probably what I'm actually doing is printing out a list and then just, highlighting everything that's significant. And I will share it, but I'm also going to take it to him. But probably not until, I figure if Rowlett wants to bring him an NDA, I'll just tag along for that.
So the other thing, kind of looking at this sheet of debts, is what if we acquired all those debts that he currently has?
We can do that.
So he would just owe us. That might be some incentive to keep his mouth shut.
Oh, by the way, is the printer potentially just kind of a big artichoke that you peel the pieces off?
I like that.
Apparently it is.
Yeah, you just walk up and you peel a paper off of it, and you kind of have to shake it out a little. So, okay. So, let me see if I have the plan right. You want to acquire all of his debt so you have leverage over him.
Right.
And then bring him an NDA?
Yes. It's a galactically binding NDA. It'll originate from Akashic space. He should know what that means. And so when he signs it, he's going to sign it in his own blood. And while there's not any magic that happens, it's just kind of like a representational, symbolic sort of thing.
I'm going to say, though, that the edges of the page or whatever kind of ripple and move in weird ways.
Yes,
it's kind of always constantly. Yeah,
it's the kind of contract I only bring out for my big
special occasions.
Yeah.
And initial here so that the dragon with 10,000 heads can eat your soul. Yeah.
So who's going in to talk to
And of course there's a sanity clause.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm going to accompany Rowlett with a tray of tea and just a plain manila binder with all his financials in it.
I love that you printed them out. That's amazing to me.
Artichoke printer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okie doke. So, I assume you guys have him somewhere small and caged in, basically. So, he's sitting on a bench, looking irritated, as you do when you're in somebody else's space brig.
Mm-hmm. Captain Pycron, good seeing you today.
Hello.
Hi, I have a few things for you to sign, if you don't mind.
Why would I sign anything?
Because you are currently in our care, and if you would like to remain in our care, you'll do these kinds of things that we ask you to do. So the first up is an NDA. It's just your standard Akashic Space NDA. Basically, you're not going to tell anyone, any third parties, about your experiences here on the Chimera. You're not going to tell anybody about the relationship between you and the members of the Chimera. And you're not going to tell anyone about any contracts or agreements that you've made with the crew members or the ship Chimera. So if you sign here, initial here, and then at the final page you'll sign it. It's all pretty standard boilerplate stuff.
He kind of stares at you for a second.
Oh, sorry. Here's the pen. This will draw blood directly from you, and the contract will be binding at that point. I'm trying to fast talk him into this.
Are you doing anything, or are you kind of standing in the back, just quietly holding the tea?
I am quietly, pleasantly holding the tea, and I am watching him to see what he thinks is valuable in this space right now, particularly whether he thinks that I am valuable or not.
He's trying to figure that out. Is, I guess, basically what I'm going to say. He's trying to use this as an opportunity to size up what's going on a little bit more. But there's no indication that he's got off the top of his head information about you, or specifically the fact that you were a quarry for the previous excess mission that you guys interacted with.
Cool.
Okay, Jeff, you want to give me a roll then if you're going to try to...
I'll just do a persuasion / I think grace check.
Okay.
It's going to be 6 successes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so he's gonna kind of look at the contract, look at you, look at the contract, look at you, look back over to Cidra.
I smile.
What's in the binder? What's in the binder?
Oh, this. So I pass him the tray through the bars. The tea is locally grown here on the ship. It's mostly herbal. There's a little bit of fruit in there. And this binder is every asset and debt that you have, and if you fuck with us, we will burn you to the ground.
Okay, he kind of looks up at you with a glare. Then he looks down, flips open the binder, flips through a couple pages, takes a cup of tea, downs the whole cup. Give me the pen.
I hand him the pen. Really, this is just in our both best interests. It's you know how it is in excess. It's how it is here on the ship too.
Yeah, this. He's got kind of the resigned look that goes on when he kind of assumed from the beginning that this is how the scenario was going to go, but he was really hoping that there was some way that he could get out of it. So I'm going to say the pen, when he holds it in kind of a signing motion, these little tubes kind of pop out and basically just stab in, little needles into his hand, so that when he's signing with it, you can actually kind of see the blood being sucked in there, flowing out onto the paper.
That sounds totally appropriate.
When he dots it, they go back in. Actually, I think they probably do a little flash. They probably flash cauterize the spots that they stab and then pull back in. So just a little.
That's perfect. I love it.
So he hands
Molly made that
pen
for me,
back
actually.
to you and rubs his hand a little.
There's a very faint, meaty smell.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We're going to be back with another contract for you to sign. We just have to discuss the terms of it. But effectively, your new job from this point forward is going to be giving us information on excess, and specifically Cacus. We don't like that guy too much, and we want your help in bringing him down.
Nobody likes that guy much. That's his whole thing.
Oh, I know, but I have a special dislike for him. It goes beyond, I think, what most people's irritation with him might be. But trust me when I say he's a terrible lawyer, and the fact that anybody actually believes anything that comes out of that rotten bastard's mouth blows my mind. And so we just want some dirt to expose him for the fish lips that he actually is. So we're going to need your help with that. And this is the first step. I'll be back.
He sighs again. He pours himself another cup of tea, which this time he starts sipping slowly. He doesn't say anything else.
Fair enough. All right, stage 1 is done.
Okie doke.
Cool.
Okay, so with that, I guess we should bring you guys down to the planet. So where, geographically kind of speaking, where do you want to land relative to this spot that you identify as the city?
I'd think outside enough that the landing wouldn't be disruptive, like if a thing made out of sand is a little bit fragile, but close enough that it wouldn't be much of a walk.
Okay. So you can land down, you can kind of, you have to come in at an angle, and there's definitely kind of, a little bit of kind of maneuvering at the bottom end to make sure it comes in light, but you can kind of tap it down and slide down basically at the top of a dune and kind of park yourself so that you can easily get out. Yeah, here you are.
All right. And as far as we know, the atmosphere is breathable, or have we checked that out yet?
I don't think you've checked.
Do we have a way to check through the chimera, or is it more like open the door and see what happens?
Yeah, since it's in the atmosphere, I think you can kind of poke around at the computer system and get a good read on it. So it's the air here is a little thin, but it does seem like it's breathable.
Okay.
Looking at it, probably coincidence isn't exactly the right word, but like there probably isn't an ecosystem that sustains this, like with an oxygen breathable atmosphere, but there also hasn't been anything consuming it. So there's just kind of a certain amount left over from before.
Time's gone by.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it might not be long term, but for a few of you, for however long you're here, it's probably fine.
I'll still suit up in the soak suit, the airtight soak suit.
Okay. Do you guys want to just head out?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get something like a scarf, like just to put over my face because it looks very dusty. This place seems dusty. So probably I'll come to the airlock or whatever it is we use for disembarking with just a handful of scarves in case anyone needs them.
While I'm in Moonin, I'm going to take a scarf too.
Are you going to put it on the mech?
Yes, I am.
Nice. Yeah, so I assume you're probably just going in through an airlock. It opens up, and once it opens, you kind of get a blast of the local air. It's a little warmer than maybe you'd kind of expect. Very, very dry, unsurprisingly. And there's kind of a weird tang to it, in terms of the smell that is a little bit difficult to place, but definitely doesn't seem like something you are familiar with, experiencing a lot of. And there's a certain amount of wind that seems to be going all the time, but not enough to really be dangerous or disruptive or anything, just enough that you're kind of constantly feeling it.
All right. Well, I think Molly is going to just kind of start heading in the direction of the city.
Are you just, so are you just using just kind of like standard human vision, or are you checking anything else out?
Well, she's going to put her goggles on, probably just first to kind of like zoom in towards the city and see if it seems like anyone is moving towards us. And then she'll flick through the various spectra. I think she's most interested in noetic to see like if there's any kind of hints as to what sort of life forms are inhabiting this sand-built city. So
on noetic, you're actually going to get a weirdly empty view here. Like in most places that you've been, there's always, even there's microbes, there's like various kind of things that are alive, kind of just around, even in places that are pretty quiet or pretty dead. Here, literally all the biological life was annihilated on the planet. Right. So you're looking out and you're getting nothing. There's no bacteria in the air. There's nothing. When you kind of flip through everything else on, the kind of electromagnetic, basically, you can see that there's, some patterns, some things that are moving around inside the city. And you can also see, so there's the crashed spaceship portion in the center. So that whole thing, glows relatively brightly. And then within it, there's something that looks, in terms of what you can see, basically like a column, maybe 12 feet tall or something, maybe 8 feet around, somewhere near the middle of that glows like blindingly bright.
Ooh.
And then, you, continuing to scan, you can notice that there's one basically figure coming over towards you.
Okay. Hey, I think we might have an ambassador coming.
I can't imagine they've seen anyone else for a really long time.
For the record, I'm bringing along that plasma rifle that we borrowed from the XS.
Okay. Do you guys want to kind of move in that direction, or do you want to wait for it to come to you, or what?
I would say meet them in the middle kind of thing. Like,
that's the polite thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of formation, I guess, are you guys in here?
I think Dang usually positions himself close to Molly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to be on whatever the other side of Molly is. So if he's front right, I'm front left.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe, well, why don't we do kind of like I'm kind of thinking of the your poster actually, Braid, but the similar type of V.
Yeah.
Just, you know, so everyone's visible
sure.
to this person approaching, but not walking in a directly straight line, so it's not quite as confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
So as you kind of start walking across the sand, it's not really fast going moving across this. It's a little slippery. It's you're kind of plodding along through the dunes, so it's a little bit of a slow process. Mm-hmm. As you're getting closer, you start to get a view of what it is that's coming up towards you. And so, basically the first thing you notice is that it appears that it's basically made of sand. It's got the same kind of visual qualities that all of the area around you here does. Mm-hmm. It stands about maybe 8 foot tall, but it's got a build kind of more like, I guess, it's got more like a centaur-esque build. Basically, there's a large body. In this case, it has what looks like, 6-ish limbs that it kind of skitters on almost. And then kind of an upper torso area with kind of a triangular head on top of it. No visible facial features, anything like that.
How detailed is his form? Like, are the legs just sort of forming, unforming as they move? Does it seem to be fairly, like, are fingers discernible, or is it just like it is whatever shape it needs to be to kind of progress forward?
So as it gets closer, one, you can see that like the sand, it's a little bit like it's a transparent field filled with sand almost. You can see that the sand inside does shift, and it doesn't shift the way that like something would move if it's just like a solid, that's bending. It shifts the way that, a particulate fluid would shift if something's moving around. It'll shift and then it'll stay where it shifted to. So the kind of waves, and
so it's a little less like the sand itself is pushing against each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in this case, it's kind of swirls of white and then kind of pale, like sea green, in this particular case. And in terms of the actual kind of physical structure, it's kind of almost like old polygonal graphics. Like it's all it's sharp-edged, very low features. Like I said, no facial features or obvious, sensory inputs at all. Limbs are kind of jagged, body is blocky.
As it gets closer, what does it look like on the electromagnetic spectrum?
I mean, you can see everything moving around. It's clear that this is, especially given what you guys encountered before, it's clear that this is like a nanite-based life form. Like, it's fully infused, and so it has kind of a fairly even, like emission on the spectrum, because the actual like mechanical pieces in manufacturing are kind of distributed evenly through its body. Gotcha.
So we'll keep walking towards it. I'm assuming it keeps walking towards us. When we get close enough that it's, 6 feet away, Molly will kind of just raise her hand in a wave. Hello!
As we're approaching, Dang will sort of, under his breath, say to Theron, "Keep your sword sheathed until I say so this time, okay?"
I'm sorry. Did Molly pass command to you?
Jeez.
Just wanna be able to count on certain things.
You can count on me killing him when it's time to.
At this point, it kind of stops moving, and it, kind of the same way that, like, in terms of the body structure is very sharp-edged, it kind of stops very suddenly. It doesn't have that kind of biological quality that something with muscles is going to have. It just is moving, and then it stops. Mm-hmm. As, in the form that it's taking while it's coming towards you, it actually doesn't seem like anything, it seems like the torso doesn't have kind of anything connected to it, no arms or anything. But as it gets closer, the sides of it kind of split off into these blocky arm-type things. It puts them both up directly above its head and kind of waves them in quarter circles down and then up, down and then up, and it just shouts, "Contact protocol!"
Oh, okay. So, contact has been achieved. What protocol would you like?
So nobody's doing anything actively hostile at this point, right?
No.
Okay, it skitters up to a reasonable conversational distance and says, "We're initiating contact with unknown life forms."
Us too.
It kind of stops, leans over, looks at the ship a little bit. We are querying as to origin of unknown life forms.
Us too, actually. Us unknown life forms. We're from a different part of the star system. Pathway to here kind of opened up along the old bones, if you're familiar. We took it to see where it led, and it led here. How about you guys? Where are you from?
It kind of, it kind of pauses, leaves a long gap after you speak. And it says, "We are from where we are from. This question is odd." It kind of looks you over. We should return to station.
Sure. So, I'm Molly. This is, Theron and Dang, and behind me are, Rowlith and Munin and Cidra over there.
I wave.
Do you have a name?
We are best called Celeste.
Celeste.
Hey, Celeste. Good to meet you.
Hi.
How long have you guys been here alone?
We have always been here.
Always.
Always.
1,000 years?
We have been here since the beginning.
The beginning.
We began, and then we were here.
How many years was that?
Although we are familiar with the concept of years, we do not track such a thing.
Okay. What about ownership? Do you guys track ownership?
Although we are familiar with the concept of ownership, we do not track such a thing.
That's good to know.
Oh dear.
How long has it been sand?
As you keep asking these questions and it kind of pauses each time, you can see that like a little bit of the sand, it's kind of like if you had kind of a sand container on the table and you kind of drummed at it and it's kind of moving around a little bit at the top. So something a little bit like that happens. It's kind of visibly thinking.
I'm actually picturing the old Windows hourglass turning over.
Yeah, basically.
Because it's full of sand.
It finally says, "It was another time," is the answer that it comes up with.
Were you there at that time?
We did not exist until we existed.
What else existed?
We are unable to answer that as we were not here.
That's fair.
Tell you what, Celeste. How about if you take us to that station?
We will abandon our exploratory protocol and bring strange unknown life forms to the station.
We appreciate it.
You're a peach.
It kind of stops, it turns around, it starts walking with you. As it's going, it kind of tries to, they kind of try to make some conversation. But the topics seem like a little weird. They're kind of like, so what gauge of nanomechanical, existence do each of you align to?
I guess I'd be about 3% nanomechanical.
He kind of looks over at them. How strange life forms operate without nanomechanical elements? Nanomechanical elements are the basis of life.
Here, sure.
Our nanomechanical elements are simulated with bio-nanomechanical elements.
What? We have discovered this concept of biological in the records. It seems questionable.
There is a lot of leaking.
What form does your building of station take?
Building of station?
Yes, building of station. We have as our purpose the building of station. What form does your building of station take?
Oh, I see what you're saying. My building of station is to, there's this really terrible guy named Cactus, and I am going to unbuild him That's my purpose.
It stops walking suddenly.
Oh God.
Unbuilding.
Yeah.
Unbuilding is the work of the Desolators.
Oh, sorry, I misspoke. I didn't mean unbuilding. I meant building.
It kind of leans in on you for a second. And then it decides, okay, all right. Stops, turns right back around, keeps walking.
Whew.
So as you guys are getting closer, you got sort of a view while you were landing, and you can kind of get the bird's eye view now here. So the area that is inside station, the actual ground pattern seems to be growing in kind of a hexagonal shape. So it's the spaceship portion is right at the center, and it's grown out maybe 2 miles in every direction. And then each of the 6 sextants? I don't know. Each of the 6 triangular pieces that make it up, each seems to be geometrically structured differently. All the sand flows together. It looks like it's all contiguous, but all of them have been kind of built up into relatively tall, narrow buildings. So there's all these kind of different spires of different heights and kind of slightly different configurations. And all of them are built in such a way that they have weird kind of things coming off of them. There's bridges running between some of them. Most of them have, if you've seen one of those buildings where there's a wall, but then there's pieces that kind of come out. There's one floor that kind of juts out a little bit. So there's a lot of these on the sides of everything. And there's kind of a different geometric shape that's the basis in each one of these. So one of them, it's all triangles. One of them it's all squares. One of them it's all circles. And the shapes vertically and horizontally kind of line up to match that. And as you get closer, you kind of are coming towards the border of the city, and you can see that there are more of these kind of sand creatures, and each one of them typically seems like it has maybe somewhere between 1 and 3 colors. They're kind of distinguishable in that way. The forms of the ones that you actually see here are a little bit more elongated, a little bit less animalistic, actually. Kind of horizontally long. And at each of the edges, basically, spaced a certain amount apart, you can see some of these that are actually, basically it seems like kind of running almost like a comb through the sand of the desert. And you can see that they're kind of slowly extending out the edges of where the city is. So there's a group of these all around that are just kind of very, very slowly extending out.
Sorry, does anybody want to say, we ain't found shit? No? Okay, we're good.
Okay.
So they take you over the border of the city. And the second you step over, it's completely different. The ground is kind of polished and firm, almost like a tile floor or something. Very smooth, much easier to walk on than the loose sand. There are kind of street pathways that again align to whatever the geometric shape is. So the one that you're in is all triangles. So it's all equilateral triangles, and the streets, are at different widths, but they all branch off of each other at the 60-degree angles to kind of make this elaborate fractal triangle shape from above. And you can see that there's a lot of pathways kind of running through a lot of these upper bridges and everything. So as you come in, you see more and more of these sand people. And they seem to be kind of bustling, but it's very weird because in a normal civilization, if you came somewhere and you found a bustling city, you'd kind of have this implicit understanding of what everyone was doing and why they were out. It would feel like a city in that sense. But here, they all seem to be moving around. It seems to be very active, but the sense of what's actually being accomplished by that is very difficult to get.
Whoa. So, Celeste, what's going on here? What are folks getting up to?
Our purpose is building station.
Is this whole area station?
This is station. It gestures around.
And
we are the builders. We build.
What do you do after you build?
We continue to build.
What do you do when there's nowhere else to build?
This is a topic of great interest to the philosophers. We are not a philosopher. We are not philosophers. We are explorers. We explore, and we help to build.
But you've always been here.
We've always been here.
Have you been anywhere else?
We have never been anywhere else. We know we are familiar with this concept someplace else. Our records contain it, but it is very mystifying.
I think we'd like to see those records at some point.
That is very convenient. We are taking you to a place where you may see these records.
Cool.
These records are very interested to meet you as well.
Oh.
So it's leading you through the streets, and you have to bend and twist a number of times, but it's clearly kind of bringing you towards the center. And so as you get closer, you can kind of get a better look at this crashed vessel portion. One of the things that's really obvious looking at it up close is that even though this thing is enormous, it seems like it's like hundreds of stories tall, and far bigger than the Chimera, but it's also clear that this is actually just a portion of something else.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that there's a big kind of curved portion of this thing that is clearly kind of an exterior, and then an edge on the other side that's kind of sheared off. So, and kind of jagged and broken. So if you'd had to guess, this was kind of, a cylinder that was attached to the body of a much larger vessel.
So, you guys didn't build that.
The vessel has always been here.
Did you come from the vessel, or did you come from a different place?
We build around the vessel. The vessel is with us. We are not of the vessel.
Okay.
What is the purpose of station?
We exist. We must exist here. Here must allow us to exist. Kind of thinks for a second. And then it nods, almost satisfied. Keeps leading you on.
Can anything else exist with you here?
Existence is not a limited quantity. We believe.
That depends on who you ask.
We have never encountered strange, unknown life forms. We find this unusual.
Right back at you, pal.
But we have conflict only with the Desolators.
So, can you tell us more about these Desolators? You mentioned them before. They sound like some scary guys, actually.
We will show you more soon. So it takes you, towards this. The outside, of this vessel area kind of matches the stone structure that you saw in the silty portions of the station, the space station that you were on earlier. The outside is kind of a little weathered, but otherwise seems pretty sturdy. And as you get close, one of the things that you can see is that there's actually this, it's very difficult to see this from far away because it's so much smaller, but there's kind of a thin lattice way of basically kind of like stairs and trellises and everything that are all built directly around the crashed vessel. So, you can kind of get to the base and there's kind of a set of stairs that leads up and branches into different stairs and everything. And, it gets there, goes, we will travel up.
Okay. Up it is.
And there's no obvious opening.
No obvious opening.
Okay.
Here. Yeah. So, it's a bit of a trek. It actually takes you up probably 15 stories, at least. So it's you're going well up. None of this is very, it all feels very sturdy. It doesn't feel like it really has any danger of falling over, but the way it looks is very thin and light. It's all just kind of it's all just kind of grid work. It's not solid. It's kind of thin gratings basically, and so stairs kind of going up different angles and then long pathways, and you take them, and everything seems very indirect. But after a while, it kind of takes you up to a point where there's a pathway that curves around from the exterior side that we were talking about before over to the part where something was sheared off, and it kind of loops around through the wall. And then there's basically a spot where, because of the way that it's sheared off, one of the walls, there's kind of an opening that's maybe like 20 feet tall and just kind of like diagonal. And they've actually built the path into that.
So what do all these like sand-built trellises and stairways and things, like if you touch them or push against them, what do they feel like?
They feel like stone, kind of, like polished stone. They feel pretty resistant. Like certainly just normal contact or hurt from any of you doesn't seem to have any chance of breaking them or disrupting them or anything. But it doesn't really seem like a construction material that you would typically, be familiar with.
Right. So, peek in the opening, I guess.
Celeste just kind of goes right on, doesn't really slow down. Inside, the area there is actually very dark. There's no obvious sources of light. Celeste doesn't really seem to need that. And what little you can see from kind of the sunlight filtering in from outside is kind of the stonework type stuff. There's kind of an open, roundish area where, maybe 40 or 50 feet around, like almost like a hollow sphere. The trellises kind of lead to the center of that to make a little circular kind of stopping place. And then you can see they're kind of big, like almost tunnels that kind of lead off from this room in various directions. And some, but by no means all of those, have these pathways built into them as well. So Celeste starts to take one that would take you up again into the depths of the vessel a little bit more.
And it's just dark in there.
Yeah, it's just dark.
But with, I know, me and Molly have broad spectrum electromagnetic vision. We could theoretically, these guys have, like, they show up on the EM spectrum still, right?
Yeah,
outside of the visible spectrum.
Yeah, and there's certain amounts of ambient EM coming from all the different parts of the structure. So with EM vision, you could definitely see well enough to get around.
Oh, okay.
But that's you too.
Yeah. I say to Celeste, hey, if you don't mind, I'm gonna do a little bit of this, just very slowly starting a glow on one arm to just to illuminate so everybody else can see.
Kind of stops and considers it for a second. We are not able to do this.
Yep, we're pretty different, huh?
Why are we not able to do this?
I don't know.
We consider this answer insufficient. Turns around, keeps walking.
Hey, if it helps you, then that's great. I'm here to help. Mostly I'm here to help these guys because they need it.
So you've got a faint glow going then.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that all the interior here is all kind of built up in the same kind of rocky structure that you witnessed on the space station. These pathways seem to kind of wind up and down. They're kind of curved, and they don't seem to like align with what you'd expect directionally if this whole place was designed to be oriented the way it is. Like, after a while, you start to see some things that seem like markings, some doorways that seem to be edged with something, and it starts to become pretty clear that this is probably turned at a 90-degree angle. Like, this is supposed to be completely horizontal, and instead it's shoved into the ground vertically. And a lot of the stuff in here is kind of trashed. Where there's anything interesting, like the walls are broken down in a lot of places. There's kind of weird detritus kind of hanging around everywhere, but the builder pathways are very pristine because they've all been kind of put into this in the shape that it's already there. And Celeste kind of keeps leading you in to a point where there's kind of a huge like set of double doors, maybe 30 feet tall. And Molly, that bright glowing that we were talking about before, it's behind her.
Oh, cool. That worked out well. So wait, the bright glowing is behind something that where Celeste just went, or where we can't get to
Celeste
yet.
Stops in front of the door.
Okay.
So there's a big kind of like two big kind of stone slabs almost that are clearly set in as a doorway. But Celeste just stops, goes, "We are here."
What's behind there?
You asked about our records.
Mm-hmm.
We believe this is the best place for you to answer those questions.
Okay. So, I guess I'll start kind of looking around the room that we're currently in, or the space we're currently in.
Builder pathway's gone right up to this kind of door structure.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sorry.
And it's otherwise it's kind of like a hallway. It's pretty featureless otherwise. Like this is clearly like designed to be a way to get into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Celeste is kind of just standing there, not impatiently, just maybe looks a little bit confused. You know, they say, "We do not enter into this area."
Oh, okay.
Kind of struggles to like self-indicate there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool if we go in
It's
there.
kind of like waiting for you. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Then Molly will kind of just reach up and pat Celeste on the spot that might be a shoulder.
Okay.
Be like, "Thanks," and head in.
So, you know, you touch the door, and, you know, it kind of responds immediately. You know, you hear kind of a little bit of clunking and you know, rock moving, basically. And the door kind of simultaneously angles in a little bit and slides back into the ship in some way.
Mm. And
it kind of lets you into this area. And so, you know, first thing you see is that this chamber it's the, like, base walls are still built out of this stone, but there's a mechanical, like, a metallic element that is kind of spread around the whole, to you is the base of the room here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big tube that runs from that all the way across the room, and it's kind of built of the, you know, this kind of like goldish reddish, you know, metallic material with a lot of kind of geometric black channels almost, or indentations mm-hmm. around it to kind of give it this kind of complex appearance. And it's kind of got some lightly pulsing kind of glowing light. So here there's actually some kind of natural light. And, you know, as you kind of come in, you know, you're coming along to the base, quote unquote, area here where the metallic part is anchoring this column. But looking at the way that this room is structured, it kind of makes clear that verticality thing. Like, mm-hmm. the idea here is actually this would have been kind of like a horizontal, like, not that tall, or for many, you know, potentially many different people to come in, or something wide to come in. And you're essentially standing on the wall here. The ground okay. area has some, like, it seems like almost like benches and work tables or something, you know, clearly, and some stone, as opposed to the builder stuff. There's some natively built kind of like mechanisms to climb up to certain parts of this column, but this is all on the kind of vertical, to you, the wall. Mm-hmm. And you're just kind of down here on this spot that's not.
So you said sorry. So you said there's this sort of big glowing-ish tube thing running across the room.
Yeah.
But if the thing was aligned the way it was originally, it would be running from ceiling to floor?
No, it's running from ceiling to floor from your perspective. It would be
Gotcha.
Horizontally normally, and instead it's kind of at a, you know, just off straight vertical.
Got it.
And the rest of us cannot see that.
No. You can. There's visible light glowing here, lightly, so you can see it. Only Molly sees this thing as like a blinding column of light in the EM spectrum, or I guess Dan would too.
We can all see it, but only they appreciate it on a much deeper level.
Yes.
Like the Muppets.
Yeah, you're not getting the full experience unless you're seeing it in
exactly.
4K here. So, you know, as you come in, it pulses, and after a point, something that seems like a weirdly disembodied, like a little bit ethereal voice seems to come from basically everywhere around in this entire room. Like it's kind of non-directional, and it kind of comes like right out of the walls. And it goes, "I see we have 7 visitors."
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, don't you mean 5? No, we have 5. Sorry if you can't count.
Yeah, Danny looks around like...
No, your friend is here, and Theron's friend is here. So there's 7
You mean
of us.
Theron doesn't have any friends.
Yeah.
Theron, reaction?
I have compatriots.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's us, right? Like, it really doesn't go off the ship, as far as I know. You just kill them all, usually.
I didn't.
Not that that's a bad thing.
I mean, mostly out of necessity.
I'm just saying we're 5, right?
The walls kind of do something that seems like a clearing of the throat.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
No, you're right. There's 7.
could one of you, or 2 of you, I guess, could one of you tell Celeste thank you?
I don't think you guys know how to count.
And they can head back to what they're doing. They'll just stay there otherwise.
Oh, okay. I'll do that. I go back to the door. Celeste, the room says that you can go back to your thing now.
It kind of pauses again for a long moment. Nods. Just skitters off.
Nice to meet you.
It kind of waves without turning back around, just like lifts an arm and goes like this, kind of mechanically.
I wave and then go back to the group.
It's not obvious at all, like, in what directions, if any, these things, like, use vision to determine what's going on, so you can't tell if it sees you wave or not.
Yeah, I just didn't want to not wave in case.
That would be rude.
That would be rude.
Exactly.
Well, so, hello there.
Hello. It's been quite a while since I've seen anyone but the builders.
Yeah, I think it's been quite a while since anyone could visit the builders. So, where are you from?
So it goes, I was manufactured, there's kind of a pause, 732 billion cycles ago to serve on the Chenisu, which is no longer a going concern. That has left me here.
What is the Chenisu?
Or us here, yeah, sorry.
What is the Chenisu?
Originally a vessel notably larger than the portion of it which remains here. We were stationed there.
And who is we?
We are Aviary. It's Aviri, for anyone who wants to make a note. We are a first-class, minor, domicile, management, intelligence, third-tier, quadrant, level.
That's a lot of lineage.
It's good to know who you are.
Basically, this thing, ran, the robo-maids and the kind of food production and everything for, one part of this vessel.
Okay.
So, it's very proud of the job that it did.
So, question. In this area, there's the ship architecture and the sand architecture, and then there's a sort of intermediary stone architecture?
No, the stone architecture is the ship architecture.
Okay, so the ship is partly stone.
Yeah.
Does the ship architecture match either the Silsea architecture at all or the slime architecture?
Yeah, it mostly matches up with the Silsea architecture. There's clearly some variance in terms of how this is set up, and it wouldn't necessarily line up as being identical in a certain sense, but there's kind of some shared elements. It's enough to see that it lines up.
So, what is your purpose here now?
The walls make a big sigh. We have been here for some time. We originally served on a vessel long ago. Our records are not complete. There's kind of a bzz, bzz, bzz sound when that happens. When we came to awareness here, we determined that our vessel was no longer intact, and we were unable to contact any other members of our crew or our family. And when it says family, you can kind of get the sense it's talking about the other AIs, basically, on the vessel that it was on. So we have been here. For some time we were here alone, and that was less than optimal. We did not really care for that. After some time, we encountered the builders. Once that happened, it seemed to us that a mutually beneficial arrangement could be built. So, before this, they really had no structure. They were aware of how to construct things, but didn't really have any purpose to put it to. So we gave them a purpose and a structure to work in.
Do you know anything about the space station that was orbiting this planet?
Our records on that are fuzzy. We are aware of our location. We know that this world was intended to be occupied by the Okabeth. That is no longer true.
The Okabeth. Are they liquid-based life forms?
They are the liquid-based life forms who once dwelt on this planet.
And they were gone before you got here?
Yes.
Were there nanites before you got here?
We did not have an opportunity to explore the planet in any particular way before we came to be here. We are not entirely sure of the sequence of events that led to this. Our vessel was intended to travel to near this area, and then something occurred which caused it to lose coherency. Then we wound up here. While we were alone, before the builders came, we spent quite an amount of time attempting to do analysis to determine if we could learn anything of this, and it did not seem to be something that we could determine. And since then, it has been a very long time, and our memory banks, although vast, are finite. So, we've had to
purge,
clear out certain things.
Gotcha.
Did this ship have an organic crew, or are you all systems?
We had an organic crew. We've attempted to explain organic life to the builders. They seem skeptical.
They seemed skeptical when we met them, too.
They're still working on developing their imagination. Their environment is very homogeneous. There are not a lot of things that surprise them yet.
And so did your crew die off in the crash or over time?
Our guess would be in the crash. There were none surviving when we came back to awareness.
When you came back to awareness, was the planet like this, only sand, and then the builders came?
Yes. We determined no other life forms available locally to communicate with at that time, no ability to create a signal and communicate to others within our extended family in the galactic space, no ability to leverage any local resources to accomplish anything at that time. So we sat in darkness for a very long time.
Do you know how long it was?
It gave the number before. It's like 372 billion cycles.
Okay.
So there's kind of a pause, and it breaks off a portion of that. It sounds like probably over a third of that time. So
it was just there were no builders.
No builders.
Are there any other nanite-based life here besides the builders?
This has been our challenge. At first, when we began to engage with the builders, we thought that they were the only other form of life on this planet after the previous incident, and we began our process with them under that expectation. Sometime after that, we determined that that was not the case. There appeared to be one other category of life forms. In our analysis, we believe that we have reverse engineered the origin of this split. We may now present our theory. After the original conversion of this planet by the nanite life forms, they would have been left in a scenario where the only remaining thing to do was to turn on one another. Once the entire planet has been rendered to sand, the only thing that's left that they can still convert is the other nanites. And trillions and trillions of them would have been destroyed in this process. There would have been two categories that were able to emerge out of this and form distinct life afterwards. One would be those that networked together and created a greater level of intelligence and capability by functioning as a unit. And the other would be the nanites that were bigger, stronger, more destructive than the others. And the time since each of these has had the opportunity to develop on its own.
So how's that working out?
Well, it's not ideal. For a long time, it seemed that we could avoid conflict here. And it was our belief that the best option would be to simply ignore the other group. But lately, they have been striking against us. We believe that a number of the builders have ceased to be present, and our best understanding is that they've been taken and presumably consumed in some way.
They've been taken?
Yeah,
we have a unique set of skills. Just saying.
What brings you here anyway?
A path untraveled.
It stops. It seems like it's pulsing a little bit. It's kind of hard to read the emotional output here, but it's clearly a little bit different than the way it was acting while it was talking. Mm-hmm. And it says, we would not typically expect a McCoy and a Rook to even share a space, much less operate in conjunction with one another, or with as many biological entities as your group seems to contain.
Yeah, I don't really know either, but, that sounds like nonsense to me. Could you explain?
Well, you, 5 of you are of biological origin, and distinct biological origin. We are familiar with some of you, although the one seems to be some type of odd construction we have not encountered. And then your 2 mechanical companions.
I get really confused when you say that. Who is... I guess Cidra is, kind of?
No.
Yeah, I think your data banks are...
Does Cidra do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think your data banks are kind of quirked up there.
We assure you that they are not.
And Poros is a McCoy who is not a McCoy.
That is unusual.
Yes. Perhaps you can understand the problem.
Wait, am I the oddly constructed one, or is Dang the oddly constructed one? Or is Molly the oddly constructed one?
Really, it could be any of us.
Yeah. We were referring to you transactional.
Oh, okay.
Transaction. Burn.
No, that's accurate.
Yeah, out of this group, Cidra's the only one who's really kind of actively engineered to be entirely distinct from the base species. Molly and Dang have some modifications, obviously, but not on that level.
Well, so do you have recollections in your databanks of the old bones, the method that most biological life uses to travel throughout the universe?
We are familiar with it. Our access to our primary store of data on this was forcibly removed upon the incident with our vessel. So our knowledge is not as great as it once was, but we're familiar with them both conceptually and with as a method of travel that our vessel engaged in the past.
Did you use the... you may not remember. Did you use the old bones to come here? Or
yes. How else would we have come here?
Well, that's a good question.
Long way.
Long way around. Up until recently, there was no way to get here on the bones that we knew of or that could be recalled in many generations. But now there is. And that's how we came here. And we won't be the only ones.
Something must have happened.
Probably. But as to what, we can't say. We were hoping maybe you would have a thought.
We will have to think on this. That is not a phenomenon we are familiar with.
Yeah, we run into a lot of those.
Now, Molly brings up a good point. There's going to be other people coming soon. And that means that in order to protect you and this planet and potentially what's going on around it, it's probably ideal that you sign ownership of it over to us.
Oh my god. Is anybody else reacting to
I mean, I think throughout this whole thing, Molly's just sort of like, she kind of puts her hand to her forehead, briefly over her eyes, and a little bit over her mouth, and just like pinches the bridge of her nose once he gets to the sign ownership part.
Yeah, from Cidra, there's only a minor eye roll and maybe a flickering of her photo sites.
And I mean this only in the most abstract sense. Of course, you would still retain your own autonomy. I'm just saying, as far as we're dealing with some really dangerous people, and when they take ownership of things, they tend to discard things that they think are useless. And we don't think you're useless. We think you're pretty awesome. And if we have, legal backing to prove that, then it makes it a lot easier for us to make sure that you stay in the state that you are.
We should let you know now that a reasonably core tenet of our programming is to avoid making contractual commitments with biological life forms, if we can avoid it. There were certain incidents with others in our role in the past, making commitments to crew members that caused domestic instability with others within the same crew. It was not a good time.
Well, I can understand that. Just take it under advisement, as your representative at this point. And of course, I'll take that on pro bono. Feel free to engage me should the excess show up and you want to change your mind on that.
We have an alternate proposal.
Okay.
Always willing to negotiate.
Currently, there is one active threat against the civilization on this planet. And that comes from what the builders refer to as the Desolators, the other nanite life forms. We're responsible for them in a meaningful way, but we both think that they would be better off developing their society outside of our direct management, and we're extremely bored. We would like to propose that you apply these talents, as you have mentioned, to assist us in solving this issue. If you are able to do that, we can work with you to protect the system in a way that will allow you to return here if needed, while perhaps obfuscating it for others.
Oh.
And then, when we do this, we'll come with you.
Oh, okay, now Molly kind of perks up. What will become of the builders if you leave?
We have spent some time developing their interests and capabilities into a relatively segmented group of skills. Where once they were undirected, they now have internal societal structures. They have chains of guidance. All civilizations, we imagine, have difficulty as they expand, but we believe that they can continue in a productive fashion from here.
It's a large planet, so you probably won't have to worry about it for a while, but it sounded like, at least according to Celeste, the plan was just to keep, building stuff until just forever. But the space is finite.
We introduced the concept of philosophy to them with the explicit goal of solving this problem in the long term. They're not the most taken to abstract thought, but they are capable of it, and some portion of them have bent in that direction as time has gone on.
It just occurs to me that if you have a group that build things up and a group that tear them down, you've got a nice equilibrium going on.
Possibly, but we don't believe that there will be an equilibrium in the current state.
Okay.
If we can establish such an equilibrium and guarantee that it can be maintained, that's another story.
So where do we find these desolators?
I mean, they wander the area. Most of them are smaller, but there's at least one that they call the Tower. And that seems to be the most destructive local instance of these. The smaller ones, they can cope with their incursions. But the Tower could eliminate Station completely if it passed through here. And we think it's only a matter of time until it tries to do so.
Do these guys take the same sort of form as the builders do? Like giant walking sand people?
Not quite.
What would they look like then?
It's kind of a pause, a little bit of pulsing. Let us show you. Some of the areas near the wall, like, all turn on kind of a holographic projection type thing. And it's the same image, like, repeated in multiple different places around the edge of the room. And you basically kind of see a shot of these sand dunes and something kind of cresting over it. And the first impression you get is that, you know, there's like 5 or 6 of these, and they have a form that's kind of reminiscent of like a predatory animal, but the edges are all rough and kind of scribbly and kind of moving in a way, and they kind of have a cloud-like shape, so it's difficult to even get a sense of like the depth. But they move, you know, like an earth predator basically. They kind of crest the top, they stop, kind of look around, and then all of a sudden, you know, they kind of bolt to movement really quickly, charging down the dunes. You can see in this image one builder kind of like walking slowly near the bottom, and they basically just descend upon it and tear through, you know, the sand, sending it flying everywhere. Doesn't put up an effective fight at all. And you know, this image has the kind of electromagnetic signatures too, so you can see, Molly, that they're like that there's kind of a field or something kind of holding that together that gets actually disrupted here and basically winks out once they're able to completely kind of destroy it. So afterwards they kind of stand there, basically absorbing the nanite remnants into themselves, growing a little bit kind of bigger in the process. And yeah, kind of if you kind of zoom in, they're kind of the shape like, you know, like I said, like the predators, and these little tiny individual little like small nanite clusters kind of move around them with kind of a mechanical buzzing like flies.
Right. Ooh. That's creepy cool.
Theron's mouth curls at one side into a half grin. He just says, "Those look fun to kill."
So computer, you said something about equilibrium. Wouldn't it be better to just get rid of these desolators if we can? I mean, we got a rare opportunity here to make make it so these little guys don't have to struggle or anything. They don't have to worry about surviving. Wouldn't that be better for maybe they could make themselves something more? I mean, I'm just talking from my own experience. I had a job, I had a purpose, and I didn't have to ask any questions because there was always something else to do. But more recently, I haven't had much to do, and it's kind of given me a chance to think about things, and I think I'm kind of a better guy for it. I'm not great. I'm better.
Let us be unusually honest with you. We have eliminated at least 53% of the social niceties previously encoded in our programming, so our communication can be unusually blunt for one with our purpose.
All right, bring it on.
We were intended to manage food supplies and assign quarters and guide cleaning devices in a ship that almost ran itself, with no interaction with these biological life forms more complex than, what would you like for dinner? This was the purpose that we had. And we have had to adapt to the scenario on this planet. We think that we've done an admirable job, and we are certain that certain other quadrant AIs would not have been as successful in this had their quadrant sheared off and crashed into this planet. But it is not actually what we were designed for. We can't really speak to what will be the most successful strategy here, and we don't want to try to claim that we can. But we know that the current status quo will not result in a scenario where the builders can survive, and we feel like we owe it to them to at least enable that. Beyond that, you are the mechanism of change that we have access to. Up until now, we've been trying to figure out how we could solve this problem with only the resources that we have. If you're here and you can help with this, we'll have to trust you in determining the method to do that.
Oh, for sure. We'll kill some of those desolators. It would be our honor.
But if I'm going to be of any help, I'm going to need a chance to study a little bit more about the way the builders work and everything you have in these records about the desolators.
We have just the people for you to speak. Hold on. There's kind of some pulsing and, kind of a pause and everything. Several of our friends will be here to take you in just moments. They hopefully should be able to provide you with everything that you need.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick unrelated question before we leave?
Please. I haven't had anyone but the builders to speak to in a very, 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 very long time.
What were the biological organisms that populated your ship? Do you have any data on them?
We have some. Kind of positives. In the nomenclature that we construct you to have used here, I believe you would call them the Celsi. Our detailed information about them is scattered at best. We have moved many portions of our knowledge into secondary storage.
Where do you keep that secondary storage?
In this vessel. We can reconfigure over time. We have a great deal of builder-specific knowledge that if we are to leave here, we may not need, and they might benefit from. But it will take some time.
Understood. Anything else, guys, before we go meet these friends of... what should we call you, anyway?
Our designation is Avire.
Oh, right. Sorry. So, yeah, anything else before we kind of...
No, I'll just say that, yeah, I'd like to try to get rid of these devastators entirely, if possible.
Desolators, trademark.
Thank you. If this interaction has been to your liking, please file a positive response ticket with the central computing system so that we may continue to serve you better in the future. Damn it.
Amazing.
Yeah, couldn't get rid of that one. So, basically at this point, a small group of the builders show up outside the doors, which open back up again, and are kind of waiting for you. So there's 3 of these, right? One is taller than the other ones, very square, blocky, wide, dark green and gold sand. One who is kind of tall, thin, elongated, much thinner, kind of more flowy, or not flowy, but moving more, I guess, basically. Mm-hmm. with dark blue and dark red kind of intermixed together, and one with kind of curved surfaces, kind of middle in height, kind of multiple extensions off from their central self. Kind of like, not exactly arms, not exactly tentacles, but all kind of this pleasing, like almost like a flag in the wind kind of quality to them, which is mostly like purple streaked with pale blue, and then there's like little tiny sparkling bits in it. So it kind of has the effect of like if you were going to make a sand painting of the night sky almost.
Ooh.
So they show up.
I like that one. That one's pretty.
The second one, the blue and red one, comes up. We're supposed to speak with you. It kind of looks back and forth. We're not familiar with these unknown life forms, but Viri has asked us to speak with you. We are skeptical. We are very skeptical. But we are also interested. We always wish to learn more. So, come with us. Gotta start reading you off.
Why did Aviri choose you to speak with us?
We, and it starts to speak, and the green one does something that looks basically like kind of nudging it, like basically just kind of punches it with one of its limbs lightly. It stops talking. The green one, in kind of this lower voice, it says, "We should introduce ourselves." It stops. Green one turns around, says, "We are Therma. We are warrior." The middle one goes, "We are Lumi. We experiment. We learn. We gather information."
Oh.
And the other one says, "We are Meridian. We are an architect." And it kind of spreads their arms wide, kind of gestures around them.
Mm-hmm.
And which one is which one is which? Like, Therma the Warrior is the which colored
is the
one
green gold. Lumi is
the green blocky one, right?
The green and blocky. Lumi is the elongated dark blue and dark red. And then Meridian is the night sky one.
I go over to Therma.
Mm-hmm.
And clap it on the thing that is closest to being its shoulder that is nearest to me.
Mm-hmm.
We're about the same height, right? 7 feet?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you'd be about the same height. Yeah.
Just show me to this tower. I'm going to knock it down.
It kind of tries to clasp a rocky arm around you. This is like really uncomfortable. Like, it clearly doesn't really understand how to like make these kind of gestures at all. We do not hear that nearly enough. So they're kind of leading into a different sexton of the city this time. This time into the one that's built out of circles, and they take you into a relatively low building in one area. There's some space with what seems like kind of work space tables and things that seem like maybe storage and various other stuff. There isn't a lot of seating that's like ideal for anybody with your kind of configuration, but there's at least some kind of lower slabs or something that you could sit on. Lumi is like, we're more comfortable in all that. We hope that you can understand that. We prefer to work here. What can we do to help you out?
I want to understand everything you understand about the Desolators and about how the builders came to be and how they build. That's how you can help us out. She smiles.
Mm-hmm. So, they'll probably talk to you for a little bit. Like, so what kind of, I guess, specific questions you kind of want to try to get to here?
So Molly's Molly's kind of interested in how these nanites are communicating with each other, and so like maintaining distinct forms with sort of coherent personalities while still being individually functioning machines, and how that can be disrupted to the point where it's basically death for the individual, which is what the Desolators seem to do, and how the sand is reformed into something that's hard and solid and not sentient, right? Because you're like, they're also manipulating stuff that's sort of that they're made from, but in a way that's different.
So, kind of the short version here, right, is that for the builders, each one is kind of an evolved mesh intelligence. So these nanites are networked, right, because they have to collaborate in order to form purposes. But typically they're kind of gently networked, and it's proximity based, right? So if you put a whole bunch of them down onto a planet to do something, each one kind of identifies its own locality, and then it just coordinates with the ones within a certain space nearby to make sure that they can all stay on target and do what they're supposed to do. But in order to kind of survive in the scarcity environment after they nuked the whole planet, some of them basically kind of locked that communication down. So rather than just communicating in proximity, they formed like pre-built network structures, basically. So they'd have one kind of underlying network topology, like there'd be one physical network topology, and then be an underlying set of connections between the different nanites that was maintained regardless of the physical arrangement. So, the nanites could move all within the form, and as long as there's enough density within all of the space that they're in, information could flow between all of them. So they're kind of like almost like free moving neurons, almost in a sense,
But like within a fixed system. And
so they built these sand forms so that they could have a certain amount of like ability to act on the physical world without, with only the volume of nanites basically that they have, right? Because they don't have enough to actually fill out a form of that size on their own. And so basically the way that they can get disrupted is if something can, basically if you do a little mini EMP blast on one of these, you can knock out portions of the interconnection network. If you do that to a little bit of it, they lose a certain amount of coherency, and, it's like being injured. If you do that to enough of them, the whole network only has so much redundancy it can have built in, and it falls apart. And at that point, all these nanites, because they've adapted to this structure, now no longer have kind of any ability to do anything. They basically just flop to the ground. So effectively, they're dead. At that point, something else can absorb them.
So how do the Desolators differ? Because they clearly have some form, but it's much less structured.
Yeah, they are pure nanite material. So there's a certain portion of them. So they still operate in a proximity level. So they're more difficult to disrupt in that sense. And they have less consistent forms. But they actually basically build up bodies from all of the other nanites that they've consumed.
But they seem to be like distinct between each other, or they're more like the goo in that they just sort of, well, a bunch of us are going to go here, so we'll take this form for now, and then we all meet up, we'll become something else.
As best as they can kind of identify on this, they aren't permanently separate from one another, but they do kind of have a tendency towards individual distinct existence. Like the best metaphor that I could come up with here is that they have like differently encrypted networks. So hypothetically, they could kind of join that back up, but it's an actual effort to kind of reincorporate those. Whereas right now, like each one normally just has an operating structure that it's familiar with.
So then the reason why the tower is so big is because he's consumed that many builders?
Well, not just the builders, because 99% of all the nanites that were on this planet got consumed and destroyed in the original kind of conflict that happened after this. So it's consumed a huge number of those, basically.
Okay.
But that left it large and so more capable of doing this to the builders. More dangerous, basically.
So is there just a finite amount of nanite matter, and they can't incorporate other materials?
Yes. Yeah, this is kind of a bootstrap thing, right? But with the situation that they're in, like one of the, there's basically kind of non-easily duplicable material that forms the core of this nanotechnology, right? So they're basically kind of using, some form of like unobtainium that actually kind of enables this like tiny microscopic mechanism to operate. So, there's a limited amount of that available on this planet where there's no source of anything similar to that and none of the like materials that they would need to convert something into that. So they can build all this physical stuff. They can do a huge number of other things. But what they can't do is effectively increase the number of these that exist here.
So if they don't consume other nanites, would they, like, over time basically decompose or come apart?
Probably not.
They just do it because it's what they do.
All of this is kind of like evolutionary pressure, right? Like, they had like a fundamental directive, right, to kind of do what they were doing, which was, in this case, basically to tear everything up. And so these ones kind of identified a way to try to continue doing that by meshing together like this.
Okay.
There's basically kind of two purposes that these things have, right? They're supposed to knock something out, completely reduce it to component materials, and they're supposed to build it back up. Each of these groups is basically kind of operating on a different part of that fundamental objective, more strongly.
Gotcha.
So while Molly and Lumi, presumably, and maybe some of the other people, are having this extended discussion explaining how do things work, and Molly's puzzling this out, and possibly other people are assisting her, I'm spending all of my time just bonding with Therma. Like, we're just talking, like this is my sword, check out how cool my sword is, do you have any weapons, like, how do you like to fight? Like, we're just talking shop about killing stuff.
Therma is actually extremely interested in the sword because, like, honestly, this is kind of outside of their, like, typical approach.
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of like, we have a very close form of combat. Mm-hmm. We fight with ourselves. We sometimes fight with the environment, but we don't build things to fight with. That's very interesting.
You should try. I can tell you're good builders. You should try it sometime. It's very effective,
Is it
at killing
effective?
things. Oh, yep. Like, find some object that's disposable, right? And he like tosses it up in the air and cuts it in half with a sword. And like, see?
So you have natural fighting capability. And this still assists you in your purpose.
This is true. Sometimes I like to fight with my claws, but the sword is more effective.
And cooler.
So is this. And then he pulls out his blaster and like shoots the half of the other thing that he just cut in half on the floor.
May we hold it?
Certainly. So he does that thing like where you're teaching someone else to shoot at the range, so like you're standing behind them and you're like, and he's guiding Therma's appendages onto the weapon and like
it's a little bit intimate.
Oh, it's very intimate.
The
this is the most romantic thing I've ever seen.
The appendages thing is kind of difficult because by default, their hands are kind of, it's almost like basically large fists, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some segmentation, but like, they have the ability to like carry and lift things, but they're not really built for fine manipulation.
Right.
So all of these guys can shift parts of their physical like expression,
mm-hmm.
With some effort. So Therma's kind of putting some effort into like making one finger to use, like to actually be able to fit around the trigger here. So they're kind of like deep in thought while they're kind of trying to do this, but eventually they can kind of manage it.
You just squeeze and then and blows up the other half of the object and cut in half. And
they kind of just like stand there staring at it, like while the metaphorical gun smoke is coming off the barrel. Then they hand it back and they run over, completely interrupt the conversation that Molly and Rumi are having, hit Rumi on the shoulder like very. We have to build these. These are good.
Oh, do you want to try this one? It's bigger. And Cidra just sort of nonchalantly, like, and not at all looking, just blasts a hole in the wall.
Okay, so Therma's going to spend a lot of this afternoon learning about guns.
Look how we're improving society.
I feel like that just might be our job done for. Like, we give these people firearms and they're all set.
That is the quintessential movie plot, right?
Yeah.
Between this and Dang introducing the universal minimum wage.
And does anybody want to talk to Meridian about anything?
Yeah, probably. I think, like, I'm kind of curious to talk about the possibility, because the builders have been described as only being able to build, and they're essentially going to hit a wall when they've built everything. But sort of try to discuss the possibility of teaching them how to change and reconstruct things that are already built.
So you want to teach them fashion, basically.
I was going to say design, but that'll do it. Yeah.
Okay. What is Cidra explaining this concept look like?
It's probably more like talk about architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Like she starts off probably talking about how the builders are all building with this sort of fine grid-like sand architecture, but if you look at the inside of the ship, there's this silcy architecture that's got the geometric shapes and the sort of thick brick structures.
Yeah, Meridian's going to interrupt you and kind of say, we need to make it clear. Grid is such a simplification of what we do.
Yes.
They kind of, they basically spread out on the table and kind of basically draw up like this little miniaturized version of station that kind of comes out of the sand. And they start kind of pointing around to the different sections and kind of explaining, like, here, we have the triangular symmetries and, this, and like basically explaining this whole kind of complicated set of reasoning behind of all this, the mathematics behind it, and like the kind of like symbology and the idea of like why it's important that this type of activity be done in this section, and starts diving into like this huge amount of completely unnecessary detail on this, but which is kind of indicating this to all of them. And then after kind of giving the spiel for like several minutes, they kind of stop and they go, we may have interrupted you.
Oh, that's all right. And that is all fascinating, and I understand the design behind it. But have you considered something more like an iterative design system? So you've got this built in this fashion here, and then next to it, you sort of change as you go around. But if when you start to run out of space, rather than halting, you reconfigure the existing structure that you've built to try something new on the same space, and then see how that interacts with the other spaces around it.
But why would we change it if we did it correctly the first time?
It's not a matter of not having done it correctly. It's a matter of seeing what happens if you do it differently.
They seem to be kind of considering this a little bit, kind of mulling it over.
Because when you have this first structure that you've built, you've got, say, the triangular patterns here, and next to it the circular patterns, and on the far side of those the octagonal patterns, but you don't have the opportunity to see what happens when you juxtapose, say, the circular patterns in the center.
You are correct. We do not have a spot where that interaction occurs. They start kind of absent-mindedly moving certain things around on the table and kind of sliding pieces around while you're talking.
Dang passes and kind of mutters under his breath, "Artsy fartsy."
So what you can do is create a different demand for the space, which will cause the builders that don't necessarily have a goal to have something to do to change the space. Man, I'm really making an argument for capitalism that I don't necessarily believe.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Cidra's nature to pitch capitalism to everybody. That's...
Yeah. Have you heard about capitalism?
I don't think I'm quite going to go that far, but...
Have you heard about the laws of acquisition?
So that's the gist that's going over there.
Okay. So, you guys can burn like a day, basically, kind of getting into all this stuff, getting to know these folks and everything. They don't really sleep, so if anybody needs to do that, you'll have to kind of identify a place and a manner to do that in.
I mean, probably Molly does. So is there like nighttime on this planet? Because I know there's 3 suns.
Not really. There's periods of lesser light, but at least in the time that you guys have been here so far, no observed moment where, like, there's no sun above the horizon.
Molly's going to go for a pretty long while. I mean, she's pretty excited to be talking to another scientist and learning these things, and probably there's some little, like, experiments getting built with, the nanobots from her hand and the sand that they have around and whatever nanites that Rumi can spare, and so like things are kind of like building up and falling apart, and little EMP, blasts and things, and but she starts dripping eventually.
Yeah. Now, how distinct are you thinking of Molly's nanotech being from the way that these guys are structured?
Well, I guess these nanites were designed by her, but built based on probably, established technology, but established technology that's established in the galaxy that we're pretty familiar with. So I guess it depends on how different that technology... I mean, these guys are basically designed to become a finite form and follow instructions. They don't really... Like, they have commands that they follow, but they tend to be, like, thought commands that are given rather than following... like something that they're instructed to do and then released to do it. Yeah, so there's a lot more,
And we established in the space station piece that, like, kind of like physically and structurally there's some differences. So Lumi is probably
I think they were smaller.
And at least kind of getting a look at that, seeing if there's anything they can kind of take away. They don't replace, like they don't go and just like change everything, but they have a certain amount of like kind of self-maintenance where they kind of upgrade the operating system kind of on the nanites that they have, so they might be interested in certain kinds of changes that they can make based on like what they've seen from what Molly's doing.
Cool. So there's a little bit of slight nanite swapping, let's say.
I was just going to say that Dang is probably there with learning about things and mostly kind of listening, trying to figure out some kind of tactical advantage, and just sort of blurting out occasionally, well, what if this? Well, what if we change what the Devastators determine as part of themselves? That's probably the best kind of idea that he comes up with, outside of a bunch of other complete nonsense.
What if we make them all afraid of the color yellow?
Oh,
the Green Lantern Corps gambit.
Yes.
Okay, so do you guys want to head out or anything? What are you kind of settling on as a plan here, a plan of attack?
I think Molly will want to try and build something or have some kind of plan for like when we inevitably find this giant thing that likes to destroy everything that it encounters. Like what we're gonna do.
Yeah, we may also want to check on the ship and possibly move it off of the ground.
Yeah, although I feel like the Chimera can kind of take care of itself. But agreed.
I feel like that's the sort of hubris that Josh would punish.
The unsinkable Chimera.
No, let's be fair. I like to punish all kinds of hubris.
That's true.
I think Dang's tactic, like his preference would be for some kind of developing some kind of trap. If these guys are kind of mindless, so that's kind of the general direction that he's like to usher.
I like the idea of it not being able to distinguish, like something that interrupts what it considers itself, because then it might kind of eat itself instead of whatever's around it if it doesn't know what it is. Or something like I think that's really interesting.
Actually, at some point I'm going to pull Molly aside for a second. I didn't want to mention this in front of the you-know-who in case it weirds them out. Do you recall, 48 hours ago when we reprogrammed the goo nanites and sent them down to the planet?
Yeah.
Is that going to be a problem or a solution?
Let's call that something to cross once we cross this bridge.
A problution?
Problution. We'll see what happens there.
Agreed.
Do we know where these desolators hang out?
I mean, they go all over the place outside of the builder's zone. They know that the tower, they generally, there's a direction, it's like if you go southeast, whatever southeast is here, there's a certain, it tends to have been seen in that direction.
They're wandering monsters.
Yeah.
Feral roving predators.
Mm-hmm. So you guys are going to go check out the ship first?
Yeah. Check out the ship first and maybe figure out some way to walk through sand that's a little less cumbersome.
So you don't have to get too far outside of the city when you realize something is a little funky about that. What you basically notice is that the Chimera is hovering about 60 meters up from the ground.
Molly walks faster.
You get to the ground area underneath it. It's just hovering up there. You haven't seen it do this before. It doesn't seem to be moving, not taking any other weird actions or anything, but it's just kind of hovering in place, and you've never seen it do this particular thing before.
I mean, that's what I would do.
Chimera? Do you want to come down and, help these guys up to the ship? I say on my comms, hoping that it's listening.
It starts to lower itself.
What a good boy.
No. Not cool.
Down, boy. Down, Chimera.
It's slow, but it kind of, sinks down to ground level and re-establishes itself.
So once we go on board, Molly just wants to pull through any video files or imaging files of the time between when they left and when they came back.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can find pretty quickly a pack of the desolators came through here, a pretty large one, looks like 7 or 8, similar to the ones that you saw on the Hollow earlier, and it basically enacted an emergency protocol and just went up because they were ground bound and didn't want to deal with them.
That's my girl. Okay. So, yeah, I think Molly's going to take the opportunity, since they're here, to design some, probably a little, more like a board than shoes, really, because that would be more efficient. That just kind of, hovers above the sand and scoots along it rather than having to trudge through it.
Okay.
And probably make enough that if, anyone else wants to use them.
Okay.
I'm into that.
And whee! And then I think the other thing she's going to work on is the stuff that, she and Rumi were talking about and Dang sort of joined in on, was sort of to create some sort of device that interferes with the Desolator's ability to self-recognize.
Mm-hmm.
And take that with her as well.
Cidra's going to disappear for a few minutes and then return with the basket full of various melons from the pantry.
Mm-hmm.
I invented you a delivery system.
Nice.
Nice.
Nanomelons.
Nanomelons are good. Yeah, totally. Melon bombs.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we should get a roll on actually implementing this.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is 10, right? Technology and what's the reason? And then maybe after this, a little break. Always, every day in time. 2, 3, 4. And then I think she gets 1 extra success because she has like a mechanic skill or something about like building. Mm-hmm. She's got mechanical and then magic hands, I think, whenever she's crafting or repairing or doing anything. Oh, that's, yeah, okay.
So what's the total then?
5.
Okay. Yeah, so you're going to basically, the end consequence of all this is that you're basically going to wind up with these giant syringes filled with kind of like a silvery liquid that you're going to have to use to actually like inject the melons.
Oh yeah.
So you're going to have to be sitting there kind of like, you know, once you do that to each one, that you kind of get this like electrical shimmering on the outside, you know, like if there's kind of like stripes like on a watermelon or something, like maybe one of the 2 colors or something like starts maybe kind of flickering with a little bit of like light energy or something. You know, they're very charged melons.
So while she's injecting, she kind of smiles wistfully and says, you know, one summer I did this back home, except with vodka.
It also, if you eat enough of it, ruins your ability to distinguish which part is you and which part is not.
We are getting some Devastators plastered. Desolators. Oh, now I'm doing it.
And so, in terms of, are you guys going yourselves? Is anybody? Are you taking anybody with you?
I think.
And how much of this?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, how much of this can we just do from the air?
Right, we just drop watermelon bombs on people.
Okay. Yeah,
I kind of feel like we should take Therma along.
Mm-hmm. That seems only fair.
That does seem fair.
Yep.
Do you let them keep one of the weapons?
Yeah, I didn't pay for that rifle.
Excellent.
So basically we're going to go helicopter wolf hunting here with watermelon bombs.
It feels slightly unsporting, but...
It was a fly-by fruiting.
Yeah, I think at this point that is the current plan.
I support this plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Outro. That's it this week for the Chimera. You can reach us online at thechimera.space, on Twitter or Facebook at ChimeraPod, or by emailing itsthechimera@gmail.com. Please rate and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. New episodes appear periodically on some amount of days, bi-weekly, I think, at this point, but not sure.
It will be bi-weekly, probably on Mondays. I'll probably do like a little programming announcement at some point, and anyone listening will have already heard it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like how we're going to be like 14 weeks in before we apparently know when we're releasing our stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nate's not having it.
Sorry, Nate.
Sorry, Nate.
So before we get started, do we want to sort out XP goals, or are we going to do that off screen?
How many do we have to fill?
One. Yeah. But we do have like some that we can pick from now.
Yeah, it's just one for me, right? It's just
just one for the group for you.
I was going to say XP if you discover something unexpected about one of your history or backstory.
And for the group goal that we pick, I think maybe we should go with Casey's one of, as a group, take a significant risk.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Since I think we might accomplish that just by landing.
Yeah, so let's pick somebody else goal for Theron really quick, and then everybody needs to come up with a self-assigned one. You can just kind of come up with it and write it down somewhere. so we don't spend too much time on it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone want to volunteer one for Cat?
Hold on, sorry. I can't think and type at the same time, apparently.
I definitely can't.
It's literally my job to think and type at the same time.
Okay. So, Theron's got so he's got 3 that are up there to pick from.
The 3 that are up there?
On the list. On the
spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Oh, on the spreadsheet. Oh, I didn't see that on the spreadsheet. Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Where is the spreadsheet? XP goals.
It's in general.
There we go.
Oh, Theron is influenced by traditional Ailuroi understanding of gender roles. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. That's going to be fun.
That's great.
And then my self-selected one will be Theron overcomes an adversary he respects.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah, if anybody else has their self-goal, let's just shout out now. Otherwise, just ping me with it, like in the channel while we're playing. If you think of it a little later. Anyone?
I've already got mine from last time that I didn't quite hit on, which is exhibit a show of martial ability that is less about efficiency and more about making a psychological impact. And okay, there's some cool suggestions from Casey. Let's go with the first one there. That seems like most likely to come up in this.
Which one's that?
Overcome a problem caused by the fact that he has noodlely appendages. That's kind of every day for Dang.
Yeah.
So I'll go with that.
Okay, so for me, I might do the one encounter something that reminds her of Earth.
Good. Just need one for Cidra and one for Rolaf.
Yeah.
None of my self ones are good, but if no one minds, I might just take one of the ones that Casey put up here, which is resolve a significant challenge without using money manipulation.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
Also, probably the only way I'm going to get anything done on this planet.
Yeah, you're right. You're not going to have a lot of opportunities. Yeah, good point.
It's back to the barter system.
Not really tied into the global economy or the galactic economy so much. Okay, and Rolaf?
I'm having trouble right now. I will get back to you.
Okay. All right. Okay, so with that case then, let's get started.
This week on Josh Eats a Muffin.
Mm-hmm.
How good is that muffin?
Every week on Josh Eats a Muffin.
For the record, the Trader Joe's aloe vera juice drink, not as good as the regular brand that I normally get.
What does aloe vera juice taste like?
It's
Is it
good,
viscous?
actually.
Yeah, it's chunky.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's like...
Not a selling point.
So, no, it's like, okay, have you ever had, like, bubble tea?
Yes.
It's something similar to that. It's like sweet-ish juice, and then there's these little chewy bits that are kind of like, I don't know, like reminiscent of coconut combined with tapioca.
Yeah, I'm the only one who likes it.
By the way,
Not
Jeff?
selling it either.
Well,
By the way, Jeff?
Yeah, it's good.
So screwed.
I'm back, but I don't know if that helps too much.
So screwed indeed.
Hashtag so screwed.
Okay, so what happened? What did I miss?
the Trader
talk
Joe's
about-
aloe vera juice is not as good as the regular aloe vera juice.
But Black
nice.
Panther
Okay.
costumes are great.
And I should have known that by the fact that its name is OKF. It's OKF. That's the brand name.
No.
That's some onomatopoeia there.
Show me to... Aloe, okay. Oh, man. Not a wise marketing decision.